What's happening, everybody? Well, look at that. I have returned the Hellcat to its stock airbox and have removed the JLT. Why would I do such a thing? Well, in this video, I will be explaining to you exactly why I have made this decision. All right, guys, so over about the last year, I've done a ton of data logs and a ton of track testing of the JLT open element cold air kit for these Hellcats. And I gotta tell you, in terms of sound and looks, really tough to beat this system. But over the year that I was testing with this thing, driving the car around and just basically collecting data in all different types of driving environments, weather conditions, etc., there were some things that came up just as far as being annoyances with having one of these types of kits on the car. And some were concerning and some were just my own hangups on things that get on my nerves. So one of the reasons why I went back to the stock kit is because, well, for my power level, and even for some power levels a little bit elevated from mine, the stock airbox, even running the stock air filter, is perfectly adequate. The stock air filter flows about 1100 CFM, which is more than enough to handle the needs of a stock Hellcat. Add to that the fact that, well, in data collecting, the JLT, or really any open air filter system, is not really showing any more airflow through the car. In fact, there could be some argument that it was actually drawing in less air. And because of that, and in looking at other convenience issues, much like washing the car, for example, driving the car in general on the street, you would have to worry about rain and relatively dusty conditions that you wouldn't have to worry about with the stock system. And speaking about dust, one of the things that I was looking at was just filtration in general. Now, obviously, a stock airbox with a stock filter is going to filter to OE standards. Well, the aftermarket kit doesn't. And one of the things that I noticed when I was removing my cold air kit was a rather concerning accumulation of dust and just general funk in my inlet track and in the snout of the supercharger that was not there with the stock airbox and air filter. So presumably a lower filtration amount in terms of just the air that it was filtering versus the stock system. That's not necessarily a good thing when you're running a supercharger or any other forced induction application where you've got rotors or turbine wheels spinning at extremely high RPM. That dust gets in there and tears things up, along with everything else that's not good for you, even in a naturally aspirated setting. So because it didn't really filter the air very well, and at the end of the day, this car is a car. I mean, I use it for just cruising around, having fun, try to use it for road trips if possible. I need that option to be available. And because the stock system didn't offer up much of a performance downgrade, or really any performance downgrade, more on that to come, I chose to go ahead and put it back in the car in lieu of the JLT. Now, what about performance? Well, the car technically has never run quicker at the drag strip with the stock setup than it did with the JLT, but there's a bit of a caveat to that. A lot of that has to do with atmospheric conditions. In the night where my car went a 1008 with the JLT, keep in mind, this is a stock boost Hellcat on 93 octane gasoline. The car goes a 1008 with the JLT, but it didn't run its best 60 foot in that pass. And it was something that kind of got me to thinking. Now, what if the car had run its best 60 foot? And keep in mind, when I say it didn't run its best 60 foot, that's really more to say that it was consistently slower with the JLT cold air intake than it was with the stock intake. Would the car have maybe gone faster with the stock intake? Well, it's kind of hard to say. I didn't swap them out on the same night, but what I can tell you is that with the JLT, the 60 foot was consistently slower, maybe because for the first couple of seconds that you get on the throttle, floor the gas and get the thing moving, it's initially gulping in hotter air. That's the only thing I can really think of. And because at the end of the quarter mile, there was not really any difference, you could maybe make an argument that it was collecting speed or something at the end of the quarter mile. The reality is that the mile per hours really weren't all that different between the JLT and the stock system. So basically, I gave up some 60 foot and was relying maybe on the JLT to cover a little bit on the back half of the track. In other words, it didn't pick up any power. It didn't pick up power in gulps like you would hope that it would, especially considering the cost of some of these kits versus the stock unit. In this game, when you're running mid-tens, which is what pretty much any of these Hellcats will run at sea level in really good air, if you're running somewhere in the tens at about 130 miles an hour, a tenth of a second, this is going to be, it might be a little bit mind-blowing for some of you guys, but a tenth of a second is over 19 feet at 130 miles an hour. That is to say that if you win by a car length and then some, that's only a tenth of a second. And it was extremely difficult to quantify what kind of gain that the car could have or would have picked up with this JLT system when it wasn't even maybe half a tenth or 3/200ths of a second quicker on average. And even that was kind of subjective and again based on atmospheric conditions. So in essence, I had a kit on the car that was consistently slower in the 60 foot, didn't run any faster realistically in terms of mile an hour in the quarter mile, didn't really offer up performance gains, but did offer up some theater. And again, it looked great with the hood open, sounded amazing under load. What more could you ask for? Basically no real loss in power, but you had the extra theater. Well, that's really all that you're buying, because what you're giving up is convenience, actual filtration capacity, and that really does kind of mean something in the long run. And for some guys, the extra noise that the thing is making, that can get a little old after a while. Maybe you just kind of grow tired of it. And that isn't really what happened to me in this case. Really inside the car, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. You can really only hear the whine of that supercharger when it was really loud with the windows down. With the windows up, I was kind of surprised to just not have as much of a difference of just a driving experience inside the car as I thought it was going to be going back to the stock system. So one other thing, getting back to the performance, guys, keep in mind that my car with the stock intake had run a 1010 in similar conditions that it ran a 1008. In fact, the 1010 might not have been as good, and it had also run a 1012. And so when you start really breaking down ET, when you start really trying to cut every little bit of data up and analyze it, guys, it looks like the stock airbox with the stock filter was probably the best setup to go with for that car. And so I decided to go ahead and make that switch. And again, convenience, filtration, a stock look, which is kind of something I prefer now over the JLT, although it does look really racy and it looks awesome when you pop the hood. I do kind of still like to see that clean stock look. But the fact that it just didn't offer up enough of a performance gain to go along with the theater that you get, you just didn't see the performance gain to come along with it. So for you guys that are out there thinking about the kit, I put about a year's worth of time into this, data logging it, track testing it, street testing it. And guys, I got to tell you, the verdict's in. If you want one of these cold air kits, just know that you're buying noise and a look. You're definitely not buying actual performance with it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Guys, appreciate you hanging out with me for this long. If you made it this far, consider hitting that subscribe button, hit the like button, ring that bell. Makes a big difference, helps the channel out a ton, helps you get the information when I'm bringing it out, helps you get the videos, helps me keep making the videos for you. Now that you suffered through this long enough, guys, that is a wrap. You guys have a great one. Adios.